like to call to order the April 29, 2020 Brooklyn City Board of Education regular meeting. Can we all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are we going to roll call?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We'll have. Oh, yeah. Thanks, buddy. David, can you call the roll?
Sure. Mrs. Barczyk?
Here.
Mr. Singer?
Here.
Mr. Neal?
Here.
Mr. Oper?
Here.
Mr. Slattery?
Here.
Thanks, Rock. Sorry.
Yep.
Now on to the superintendent report.
Thank you, Mrs. Barczyk. Board of Education, Mr. Hoskin, everybody this evening. Just a few different things. First, I have to start with issue 25, certainly. And I want to certainly thank and address our community tonight and say thank you for your support of issue 25. Another great win for Brooklyn, but in particular another great win for our students. Having a 65% passage rate right now in terms of this environment and what we're dealing with is phenomenal, and I think is a credit to the work that our teachers, our administrators, our staff is doing, so I have to thank the community for that. Particularly, I want to thank our levy leads, Kathy Flanagan, Pat Flanagan, and all the volunteers who did a lot of work, spread the word out there. It was a non-traditional campaign, but certainly was a successful one. So all those volunteers who did that. Certainly, personally, I'm very proud. I think I may be the first superintendent in Ohio that has passed 3 levies in less than 12 months. So that is a record that may never be equaled just because of the timing of these. But certainly we are on a streak now of 4 straight. But as we told the community, we're going to honor that, and we're not going to come back until at least November of 22. So I think we're in a great place, but I want to thank the community first and foremost for that. Certainly, where are we in terms of school right now? We've heard from the governor, we've heard different orders, but we are still in a distant learning, remote learning paradigm. We're in level 3 with our remote learning. I got to give credit to our teachers. They've done a lot of creative things in terms of project-based learning, which really lends itself to using it on the computer. Doing a lot of things. Obviously, all of them are using Google Classroom extensively, and having our kids access the lessons and so forth from there. Virtual team meetings are happening. We've gotten some great screenshots from our principals about teams, and they're meeting on a daily basis. And so, a lot of folks think that it's just the Google Classroom and it's one instructor and it's the students are going on, but our teams of teachers are meeting and collaborating and doing so. And so, really proud of that. This afternoon, I had an administrative meeting, and so there was, 11 of us on a Zoom, Mr. Hoskins included, and talking about a variety of things going on. So, and we're handing out more Chromebooks as we go forward. Thanks to Mr. Black and Mr. Smith and the principals, we're finding that some of our folks maybe didn't get the first message, so we're trying to make sure and accommodate them with the devices. So we're handing out even more so some of those as they go on. A lot of business as usual. At this time of year, I'd be talking to you about what we're planning for in terms of summer. And Mrs. Kalish and I are talking about how do we do intervention for our 3rd graders. Typically, we look at this time of year, our 3rd graders who hadn't reached the 3rd grade reading guarantee threshold. And that team, the 3rd grade team, is meeting at the end of this week to discuss that. Who are those kiddos that fall into that? And then what's intervention look like for the summertime? Because that's just as important this year as it has been in the past. To be honest, it may be more important this year than ever before. So those are things that we're continuing on as we, business as usual in terms of instruction. I think the big thing that I wanted to talk to you tonight about is what we plan for next year in terms of 20 and 21. what the administrative team and I are working on right now are multiple drafts of plans to present to the Board of Education, probably by the end of May, early June. And right now, we're looking at coming to you with perhaps 3 different plans. Plan A being one that is a typical opening, meaning students and staff, everybody's coming into the building and we're opening as is. Even though that might be typical, there's probably still things that we're going to have to be prepared for in that plan. Plan B would be an opening that looks very similar to what we're in right now. Distant learning, remote learning with our students, in home with devices, and we're in this same paradigm where we're social distancing or doing everything in remote. So that's 2, because with that plan, with B, is that you really have to still do a lot of professional development with our folks. How do we kind of get into a greater grading paradigm with that, and the learning standards and so forth. So that's B, and then certainly C is a blended learning model. The governor has talked about this. He's hinted about it. So what does that look like? We haven't got enough direction right now from the governor and from even the Ohio Department of Education on what that may look like. But that could look like a bunch of different things, and I think school districts right now are starting to try to think about what that might look like. Is it alternate days? Is it half days? Is it, so forth. The administrative team and I, we're just starting to just create a list of the things that we have to be mindful of. That was not the purpose of tonight, but just to tell you that those are the plans. And so the idea is that by the end of this month, the end of May, early June, myself, maybe Mrs. Kalish, will come to you with some drafts. And hopefully by that time we have some more direction, of what perhaps it's going to look like. But we may not. But I want you to be prepared or know that we are looking at, what 2021 is going to look like and what that's going to look like in terms of opening. Obviously, with the graduation announcement, the governor has kind of gone a little bit back and forth on this. Certainly last week we heard, look at virtuals. Now he's kind of stepped back from that. I know I'd like to use some of our time and other business to kind of discuss that openly. The administrative team and we've talked a couple of different times about that. I've shared some of the ideas with you in my weekly report. I thought that we could kind of talk a little bit more about that as a group as we kind of go forward and do that. A couple of things that are on the agenda tonight, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. First of all, the GPD contract amendment. If you recall, last Tuesday we had a contract with GPD on that, and that was for the practice field regrading, reseeding, but also removing of the mound. Now I should say it wasn't for the actual work, it was for the upfront work that has to be done on that. Tasks 1 and 2 were the surveying of that as well as the actual engineering of that. So GPD, who we contacted through Ohio Schools Council, was that. And there was some question about, whether that contract that we agreed to had tasks 3 and 4 on it. Talked with Rodwell King of GPD, he said that's fine. There's an amended contract on tonight, that says just tasks 1 and 2 on there. So there's no question about concerns about where are we on the hook for 3 and 4. Rodwell King understood totally, and he sent me that, and so that amended contract is on there.
I think that's a good idea.
I figured it would be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So then we also have, we've talked a little bit about PlugSmart. On it, we've talked a little bit about moving forward is I think, Mr. Slattery shared last week, the facilities committee here, myself, Mrs. Neal and himself, we've deemed that, we've got to repair and replace that heating element, that HVAC in the gymnasium of the high school. It's one of the things that's been inoperable. The other one has been on the fritz many times, and so we needed to get that replaced. And so you're going to see on the agenda tonight, after a lot of discussion with legal counsel, a resolution for urgent necessity. So you say, okay, an urgent necessity to look at that and to perhaps move forward with that. So what I thought I would do is kind of talk a little bit about the timeline that brought us to urgent necessity. To hopefully it makes sense, and if the board wants to move forward with that. So if you look at that, I mean, certainly the heating element in the high school gym has been a concern. I think I've shared that with you over the course of the months. During the winter season, I think I even shared with you that Mrs. Neal and I were worried that it may not make it through the winter. And we were kind of holding our breath and crossing our fingers that it would get through it. And so thankfully we did get through the winter season. And at that point, we said we need to engage and start to work on that. So we brought in Gardner. And why did we bring in Gardner? Gardner is the group, the company that does the repair and services those heating elements. And so we brought them in with the purpose of, where they would give us a spec on the work. We said, really what I'd like you to do is come up with a specification. This is what we need to do. We need to repair those or replace those heating elements. So when they came in and they met with us, what they shared with us was, well, here's the spec, here's what we can do. Now, let me tell you the rest of the story. Gardner came in and said, well, we could do this as a cooperative purchasing piece, meaning it would not have to go out for public bid. And so we were intrigued. We thought, okay, that's pretty interesting. That's kind of interesting, good idea. We can kind of avoid the time and the money and the energy that goes into going for public bid, because that's not a terribly easy process. But as Mrs. Neal and I talked about it, we said, well, how do we know that this price is the best price? And certainly when you do cooperative purchasing, you're going out to get the best possible, and they vet it for you. So that's where we engaged and said, you know what, let's make a call to PlugSmart, who we worked with. Obviously, we know them from our work with our House Bill 264 project. And they've done good work with us with that. So we brought them in and said, same thing. Hey, we want to repair or replace these heating elements. What do you think it's going to cost us? So at that point, they completed that and they gave us a quote. And there was a big difference between the two. And so that was where Mrs. Neal and I sat down with Mr. Slattery and said, here, we got two different quotes, but they're very different. The PlugSmart one was noticeably lower. And so, we talked with PlugSmart and said, can you just verify, confirm this number? We want to make sure that it's correct. And can you still do this in a fashion that we don't have to go for public bid? And they said, yeah, okay. So they confirmed that for us. So we went through, we said, hey, we'd like to move forward with PlugSmart. They proceeded, they gave us a resolution. Now the resolution on it that they sent us last week said urgent necessity, which was, okay, interesting. I thought it was going to be more of a cooperative purchasing one as, hey, we can do this as a consortium pricing. So that's, I think, where the question has been over the last few days about the contract being one of urgent necessity. Now, as we look at this, and now we're at the end of April, and we want to repair this, and we want to have this ready for fall, maybe late fall at volleyball, or even certainly the winter season, urgent necessity may be actually the timeline for us. Because in talking with PlugSmart, the lead time on some of these heating elements is anywhere from 10 to 14 weeks. Now, that's pre-COVID-19. With that being said, if a hospital comes forward and says, hey, we need a heating element, in today's market, they're jumping to the head of the line. So, which makes perfect sense. So that just gives you an idea. So in talking with legal counsel today, quite a bit, ad nauseum, to be very frank, we said maybe what's best to do is to just say, you know what, let's just do a urgent necessity resolution, which is in front of you today, to say that we're going to act on this with PlugSmart over the next few days, or next week. I think the actual date on there might be May 8th. What that does is it gives us time to get those contracts from PlugSmart, vet them through our counsel, and to make sure that everything is good. But to tell you, the quote for the heating elements replacement from PlugSmart is in the neighborhood of about $95,000, where Gardner was probably looking at somewhere in the area of about $160,000. So that's a pretty discernible difference. So I wanted to kind of at least give you kind of the history of how we got here to an urgent necessity resolution tonight. So, questions with that?
Looked at the proposal, Dr. Mark, and so we're replacing 2 units then.
Yeah, there's actually 2 units, and one of them has been inoperable for some time. So the one has been the one that's just been kind of holding up.
So that's the proposal, 2 units, and that was the same proposal from Gardner to replace.
Correct.
They weren't gonna add another unit.
No.
They thought it was sufficient just to have the 2
No,
units.
we asked a lot of questions about that because Mr. Slattery can confirm this as well. What we also talked with them about was, so if we're doing the heating, what if we were to consider also putting air conditioning into the gymnasium? So we asked both companies to do that as well. We found out that adding AC was significantly more.
It was quite a bit more, and the conversation we had was, we need to take care of the needs right now, and the wants have to wait, because it was so much more.
Well, because you're in a water system, heated water
Well,
system.
and what that would have meant, Mr. Singer, actually, is that we would have had to then go to rooftop units.
Right.
So what that I think that a lot of the extra cost came in. You're putting rooftop units, and because of the large capacity of that gymnasium, I think it was going to need multiple. Then you've got to bring piping into it, so you'd have to go in through the wall or the roof, and I think we know some of the issues that exist there. But the cost, I think, was prohibitive, and I appreciated Mr. Slattery confirming that. And I think the needs and the wants is a great description. To be very frank, I would want to see AC in our classrooms before I would put it in the gymnasium. I think our teachers and our students and our community would want us to consider that before a gymnasium. So, trying to be the best possible steward of our district's resources, I think that's a much better decision. So I think that when we saw the discernible difference in the price, we said, it doesn't make any sense. So we really concentrated just on the heating element part of that. Good question, though. Thanks.
Is that proposal all inclusive, in other words, removal of the old units, doing all the electrical tie-ins?
Correct.
And we're tying into the existing system of managing
Correct.
the heat too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the heating units themselves really aren't that big of a deal. They're a fan, they're a heating element. It's just putting them in there is kind of because those are tight spaces where they are, but there is 2 of them. Other questions on that? Because I want to explain those 2 contracts, or 2, I should say, resolutions, because they're really not contracts per se. So, Mrs. Barczyk, that concludes my report tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Who's reading tonight?
I guess I am.
I'll read if you want.
Go ahead.
You know,
That sounds great
throw
to
my
me.
hat in the ring.
That's great.
Resolved that the minutes of the April 9, 2020 special Board of Education meeting and April 21st, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting be adopted and all action be taken by the Board and the Board of Education at said meetings is hereby reaffirmed and approved.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Second. Questions, comments? Mr. Hoskin, can you call the roll?
I muted him.
Someone unmute him.
Can he unmute himself or not?
Turn the volume up on your thing.
He's still muted, I think.
I think he's still muted.
No, he's not.
Okay.
There
First of all, before I call the roll, I'd like Mr. Neal providing the documentation for the last meeting, and Mrs. Barczyk for providing the information from the April 9th meeting. With that, Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Oprah,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barczyk.
Yes.
Resolved that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby amends Resolution 2020-04-114 to reflect the changes per attached agreement on file in the treasurer's office.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Can I have a-
Second.
Good. Questions, comments?
Really, I think I described it again. This is an amendment to last week's contract. Okay.
All right. Mr. Hoskin, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Roper,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
And can someone tell me who made this, who seconded it?
Rob Snyder.
Rob?
Yeah, it was Mr. Slattery.
Rob?
Yep.
Thank you.
Resolved that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with the ESCLC to provide a literacy consultant for K through 8 in relation to LETRS learning on May 7th and May 12th, 2020. Agreement on file in Treasurer's Office.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments?
This is the contract for letters training. Even though we are in a remote mode, we're still gonna continue on with some of the letters training. And so, Mrs. Kalish was able to work this out with the ESC, that we can provide that virtually on May 7th and 12th to our teachers, so moving forward with that.
Mr. Hoskin, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Roper,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
Resolved that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby approves the second reading adoption of the following board bylaws policies as noted. Procedural.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments?
So, again, we did the first reading last week. I talked a little bit about these. What we've added to these simply is adding an additional compliance officer with those. Typically, we have our pupil services director as our compliance officer. We wanted to put a second. So in this case, we added the assistant superintendent or director of curriculum to be that second person.
Mr. Hoskin, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Roper,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
Urgent necessity to replace high school gym HVAC system as noted.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion. Questions, comments?
Again, I think I hit this one hard too earlier. Again, this is just an urgent necessity so that we can move before, on or before May 8th to then work with, Plug Smart to do the actual work itself.
Do you know the time frame it's gonna take to do that work? I mean, I'm not gonna hold you to it.
So, no, I think one of the things I just talked about was that there's probably a lead time of about 10 to 14
Right.
weeks. So if you put that out, we do the contract, let's say it's on the 8th, 10 to 14 weeks, we're looking at mid-July, maybe later. The actual work, now again, that's in the perfect world.
Correct.
That might be sometime in August. So we're gonna be right up against potentially volleyball season, but, hopefully we can get that thing done in that time. The optimal is to try to get this done before kids come back into school, because then you got workers and gym classes and so forth.
Any other questions?
I have one more question on this. Has our legal counsel reviewed the contract?
No, and that would give us the time to do that, actually, Mr. Singer. So if you move forward with this resolution, then we can have the contracts provided that we have from Plug Smart so far, give those to our legal counsel, vet those, and make sure we can get that done.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Hoskin, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Roper,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
Resolved that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby enters into an agreement with Healthcare Process Consulting, Inc. for the purpose of HPC assisting the district in managing the 2020-2021 Ohio Medicaid in order to procure federal Medicaid reimbursement for Medicaid eligible services provided by the district. Agreement on file in the treasurer's office.
Motion, please.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, was this brought up this was brought up just last week, wasn't it?
You know, I'm gonna ask David,
I thought we already voted on this.
we didn't. David, if you can clarify, because this was the question I had for you, David. This actually is what I described last week.
Okay.
This
Yeah,
is
so,
when we do,
Mark asked me
I'm gonna
about
have
that.
him do it.
Go ahead.
You got it muted, Mark. Mark
fine.
asked me about that over the weekend, and what you approved last week was a contract to do the AUP audit with Charles Harris for the Medicaid for School program. This is HPC, and they actually do the processing for the reimbursement that we receive for the Medicaid for School program. So one, make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. We have all the right signatures. We have all the documentation we're supposed to have for the IEPs. The other one is the collection and processing of the information for reimbursement.
From these people?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, David said it much better than I could have. So last week was the auditing of it, of the process. This is the actual process itself.
Okay.
So HPC helps us get reimbursement for those Medicare eligible services that we provide kids. Yeah.
David, we received about $52,000 from Medicare, is that about right?
Yeah, we received, they have a process where they do current billing, and then they go back and do other billing. So we received $50,000 in 2018 billing, and then more than that for the the current fiscal year of 2019. We get a check once a month based on their services provided by OT, PT, speech, those kinds of things, psychologists, and then that's sent into the Medicaid for School program, and then we get a check for that as the time goes on. So as the providers are documenting their services, that's when we get it, and then after that, then they go back and see if there's anything that has been missed, and we get a check for that.
How often do they invoice us? And the reason I ask is that if I'm correct, this was the subject that it was backdated and we were, am I correct on what I'm talking about?
No,
You
they
were-
don't bill us at all, Rob.
What was the subject we talked about the other day? And it was 2018 or 19 and
It was the other resolution that sounded like this, that we were, you
it
know.
was the same, but it was the same subject, the auditors. Okay, well,
They required audit of this program.
right, well, I mean, that was the question that came up on this subject with the audit motion. How often do they bill?
The auditors,
Yeah.
for last week's motion, they just bill us one time after it's all done.
Okay, because it was, there was
June
three
2019.
years.
Yeah, June 2019.
Yeah,
and-
so it would be $2,100 for this year, and then $2,150 for the next year, and $2,200 for the year after that. But they don't send us a bill until the audit is complete.
Okay, that answers my question of why there was 2019 in there.
That was a little confusing.
That, I was just looking for a little bit of clarity with that.
Yeah, it was a 3-year contract. Otherwise, if we went year to year, by committing to a 3-year contract, they kept the price increase less than it would be if we tried to do it each year.
Yeah, good idea.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, David, a question, at the top of your head. How's the COVID-19 effect, has that affected our billing of Medicaid? Has that had any kind of impact for this year?
For this particular
For
program?
this fiscal year, yeah.
I'm sure that since March 13th that the services provided by OT, PT, and speech are a lot different than they were before, and that's how they bill. So if the student is required to have 30 minutes a week in OT, then it has to be documented, and if the student is Medicaid eligible. So it's not every student
Right.
who receives OT that is reported or we get reimbursed for it. It's only those students who are Medicaid eligible. So they're getting a waiver or some kind of supplemental from the government.
So does Medicaid, do you know if Medicaid allows for like a telemed, the service to be provided over electronically versus hands-on?
I don't know that. That's probably got to be vetted out through HPC to see what what's happening now.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that the students are getting the service and then we're billing Medicaid and getting reimbursement. But I'm guessing there's third parties that are doing this work.
HPC does all that, so the providers have to record who they see and what time, what date, what time, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Hosking, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Ober,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
All right, resolve that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby accepts with regret the certified retirement of Jane Kamen, effective at the completion of the 2019-2020 school year.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, we obviously accept it with regret. We're all excited for Mrs. Kamen, one of our kindergarten teachers, but I think she's excited about it. But obviously, I think she's probably a bit taken aback by the way the school year has ended for her, because she obviously didn't have that opportunity to really engage with her kids. But we're happy for her nonetheless.
Anyone else?
Good luck to you. Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
If you have grandkids or kids, enjoy them as well, too.
Mr. Hosking, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Ober,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
The Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby commends Jane Kamen for her 25 years of service to the students of Brooklyn.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments?
Congratulations. That's great.
Congratulations.
Congrats, thank you again.
20+ years, that's phenomenal.
Well, mission.
Mr. Hosking, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Ober,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
Resolved that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education accepts the April 22nd, 2020 retirement notice of Jean Reaney for the Brooklyn City School District High School Cafeteria Assistant Cook effective July 1, 2020.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Rob, second. Questions, comments?
Another one that we're, taken aback by. We're, excited for her. I've known Mrs. Reaney for some time, and having her students in class, and coached her son in basketball, and we saw her at the parade the other day too. I think we went down her street, so excited for her. So,
Congratulations. Enjoy the second half of your life.
Mr. Hosking, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
Mr. Ober,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
The Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby commends Jean Reaney for her 28 years of service to the students of Brooklyn.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Questions, comments?
congratulations.
Congratulations.
28 years,
Good
yes.
job.
Thank you as well.
Mr. Hosking, can you call the roll?
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mr. Neal,
Yes.
abstain?
I said yes.
You said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said fast. Mr. Ober,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes. Other business?
I'd like to kind of bring up graduation, kind of talk a little bit about that.
Can I make a statement before you do that?
Absolutely.
Everybody that's watching this live or going to watch it, please listen to the whole conversation before you jump on social media and start throwing your 2 cents around. I appreciate your 2 cents, but it always kind of seems like people hear one thing and they freak out, and then it kind of goes in a different direction. Listen to the whole thing. I'm sure we're going to hopefully come up with a solution tonight. Just hang tight and give us a few minutes and let us do that. Thank you.
So that's a good start. I think, as I told all of you before, I have a senior at home. And, when you look at graduation, it is the culmination of, in our case, 13 years of education, from kindergarten through 12th grade. And so it is a day that many of our students look forward to. It's a culmination of a lot of work. And in this district, it's certainly, you're with many of your friends throughout this time. And so there's a lot of emotion, and we all talk about how commencement is probably one of the highlight activities of all of our years because of what it brings and the excitement and the energy and the emotion of it. So with that being said, it's difficult now as we have to now come up with a way to honor our graduates in the most respectful and appropriate manner, given the different parameters that the governor has given us. And we also want to honor people's comfort level with social distancing and not. So, I think that's the thing that, we as an administrative team have been struggling with as we try to go through the plans. And certainly I know you as the Board of Education also, you're trying to weigh, the sentiments of many. So, as we've talked about what's special about a Brooklyn graduation, we try to identify some of those elements that students and staff and parents have talked about, and they always come back. And one of the things that we always hear is, I like to walk across the stage. I'm in the auditorium. I mean, you've preserved that auditorium for a reason in your construction project. And so one of the things that we feel strongly about is trying to create a scene or that event of students walking across the stage. So that's something that the administrative team and I have talked about and feel strongly that we'd like to do. And to have students come in one at a time, cap and gown, and to be able to walk the stage, and have that event and do so with their name being read and replicating that, and then obviously putting that all together. Certainly when you do that, during commencements we have pictures. There's always a picture that is done with the high school principal and the graduate. So we want to honor that as well, but we have to honor it in a different fashion this year. Obviously you don't. So I think we're looking at how do we create or have that photo done in a social distancing aspect. So we're looking at trying to replicate that as well. And then certainly the emotion behind, the student speeches, the music that comes from that. How do we put all those things together in an event? And so the administrative team is talking about, just that. How can we put those things together into a meaningful graduation experience that can be almost replicate as much as possible what kids go through. So, those are some of the ideas that we've presented, and that is going into more detail, having students come in one at a time at set times to come in, cap, gown, maybe getting it at that time, having the walk across, videotaping that, getting the picture. And this is where, talking with you guys as Board of Education, because certainly you're involved in that. You guys as the Board of Education hand those diplomas. Well, certainly handing diplomas may not happen, but how do you there to distribute that and show that the Board of Education is providing that? Because, the Board of Education's name is on the diploma. So how do we replicate that? So I think that's part of the discussion, and then so that's something we feel strongly about. And then, what is that? Are there other things that we're trying to do? We are planning a senior awards night. I shouldn't say it's a night, it's probably a late afternoon, if that. And that'll be coming up in May, and we're going to announce that to seniors. And what that will look like is just probably a couple of us here on the stage announcing senior awards, and then we're simultaneously going to be having those awards sent out to the particular homes. So, I mean, our seniors get a lot of awards at the end of the year, from scholarships to, department awards, and we want to still do that and honor it, and we thought this was a manner that we could still do that. So there's a couple of activities there that we've got planned, and I don't want to bird walk away from graduation. I want to bring back to that. So that's where I want to hear from, the Board of Education on that, because certainly we've probably heard from folks about, what about, we have a stadium, how could we do that? Can we social distance there over at the stadium and try to still replicate that? There's a lot of logistics with that. I'm nervous about that. And can that be done safely in getting people in and out of there? Some of I'm talking with other superintendents. Some schools are doing drive-ins where you drive your car in. There's a commencement activity or address, and families and graduates stay in their cars, and they see something, and then something happens. Again, where does that happen in Brooklyn? I mean, we have to find that place, I don't know if Ridge Park Square is that place, but again, we'd also have to be there, would be free of other commerce that's going on there. And certainly the kind of the cobbled together way that we just talked about. And then, certainly, they have to also, I think the governor has said yesterday that honoring kind of the social distancing in the gatherings, and I think he's limited that to a very small number of people being together. I think his latest number was 10.
He kind of backtracked what he said from yesterday.
Yeah, so I mean, he surprised, Mr. Slater, that's a great point, because he surprised us as superintendents when he came out with yesterday's discussion, because a lot of us were like, well, wait a second, that's totally different. And today he seemed to back away from that, which, again, I think now what we have to do is figure out what's best for Brooklyn. I mean, like every community, that's why it's nice to talk with others and find out what they're doing. But I think what we have to do is find out what's best for us.
Yes.
What is best for us? So I kind of open it there to kind of, you've heard some of the ideas, that we're thinking about in terms of administratively. What are some ideas and things we can kind of bounce around here?
I mean, I know I can speak for myself. I've been getting a lot of, anytime something posts up and somebody sees it and other school districts doing it, boom, there's a lot of parents that are unbelievably passionate, and I appreciate that. I have kids myself. Lucky enough that my kids didn't have to face something they're being cheated. And there's just certain things. The worst part about this is that normally when something bad happens, you have somebody to place blame on and you can be mad at, and it kind of helps the whole processing of, I'm mad at that person, but I'm going to move on. This is the solution. There's no bad guy here. So, and all these different ideas, and I applaud them all. And in an ideal world, the stadium would be a great idea, but you have that variable of the weather. And I've had parents said, I don't care if it's pouring rain and lightning, I'll stand there and I'll dodge thunder and lightning. And I appreciate that, but that's just not a reasonable thing for us to have to deal with. And I'm not making this about us, but I'm just saying we have a responsibility to make a decision. And if we were to plan that for May 31st at the stadium, and it pours, and then we say, okay, well, we're going to push it. What about the kids that are going to go to the military? If out of anything, and I said this to Mr. Neal, we owe all of the seniors, but I think there's even a higher obligation and debt to the students that are signing their safety away to represent our nation. We can't just say, well, okay, there's 6 or 8 or whatever the number is, and they're just going to miss out. We have to do something that we can guarantee to carry through. And there's you take all the variables out, the weather, everything else, the auditorium makes the most sense to me. If it takes 4, 5, 6 days to facilitate that and get that done, that's what we signed up for. It's not ideal. And bottom line, whatever we do, we're gonna be wrong somewhere. So even if we do it wrong, we have to do something. So I like the idea of controlled environment, bringing so many in. We're gonna have to make a determination of how many family members. I know they normally get, what, 7 or 8? Is the
Well,
normal?
typically, I mean, we have, in years past, we've loosened those restrictions when we've had there, because we've also used the balcony. I mean, I don't think we've ever been to capacity, but, you know, if we had bigger classes, I think they did. I think where we have to look at a number is, you know, certainly if the governor has kind of given us this 10 number, we've got to be mindful of that. And if you kind of count the people that are going to have to be there, we've got at least half to 2/3 already accounted for. Graduate, high school principal, at least one board member, superintendent, photographer, videographer, and now all of a sudden you've got 4 potential slots. And certainly, you know, as if I'm hearing, you know, one of the things is if we want to make this something special that the student or the graduate is doing that, do we invite them to bring a couple of family members with them to do that? You know, so maybe that's a picture as well. So, you know, when you do that, all of a sudden now you've gotten to 8. And that's pretty thin. So, because we've kept it really, and I'm only saying one board member, because, you know, if we've talked, you know, the routine is typically you take rows of graduates. So, you know, Mr. Roper may have today, and Mr. Singer's got today, and Mrs. Barczyk's got this day, and how do we do that and rotate that around to be equitable amongst you folks? So, you know, I think those are some of the things, you know, I appreciate. We're trying to look at how do we, because I think we want to give very specific instructions to our graduates and our families if we move forward with this.
Did you count yourself in that number?
I think I did.
I don't know if you did, so I've
Well,
gotten down to 3.
and whatever policy or steps we come up with, they have to be adhered to strictly
Yes.
by the families. I mean, we can't, you know, I understand this is an unbelievable emotional time, and I'm not demeaning any of it. But if we set the number to do this, we have to stick to that number. It can't be, well, this is the last time somebody's gonna see this, or, I mean, as sad as it is, there's a line in the sand that has to be, I mean, we just don't have the luxury to flex. It stinks, but it's the reality we know.
Right, the only other thing you could do is to compress the time that it takes is maybe add a person like Mr. Ross to maybe if you can get 5 or 10 and have him wrangle everybody and keep them apart, then you could kind of speed up the process if you wanted to go that route, but that's adding another person as well.
I think Fairview Park is doing a 10-minute interval between students to come in, but the kids can line up 6 feet apart and still maintain, you know, the social distancing. And then they're called up on stage, they'll take their pictures, the videography. And another school district, and I'm trying to think who it was, I'll have to get back to that. What they're doing remotely, off campus, which I think this is part of the equation, because whatever you do on school property has to comply with whatever the state says.
Sure.
So they go to a local park. I would say we would probably use the gazebo and maybe Memorial Park to tell the parents that we're gonna have people there that will help coordinate pictures to be done off campus. So when the family, talking about the family, Rob, the family would not be included in the process here, the pictures and everything else and the handing of diploma. But we'd ask them, we would set up something really nice, class of 2020, form at a remote site using one of the city parks, and then have them say, as soon as you're done here, we're gonna have somebody there to coordinate the picture taking. Because we don't want people lined up over there either, you know. So we'd have to maybe have 1 or 2 sites where the parents can go to that site, let's say the gazebo on Ridge and Bidoff, and then have the family take pictures and then move on.
Rock?
I'm not sure where to go with this, to be honest. I'm a senior parent, I'm a little upset with it too, but I'm hoping maybe in a few weeks, the governor loosens up and said, okay, you can have 25 people together. I don't know. So, I'm not sure where to go.
I know I've spoke with many people, I've met with people, and got some really good ideas. I also think that I think making a decision soon is the best option for us, because I think it lets everybody know then we've made the decision, it's done, and this is what we are doing. I know Fairview has made their decision, they've put it out to the parents and their community, so it's done. So I think that's a good, I think the sooner we can figure this out, the better it is, because then the angst that all of our seniors and their parents are feeling can kind of be, you know, kind of relieved. And are we going to please everybody? No. I also personally do not think the stadium is a good idea. The weather, for some reason, it seems to rain a lot on our graduation days. It really does. I have ran down these side streets because I parked down there for graduation in the pouring rain more times than I would really care to count. There's a lot of logistics to the stadium. I know people have said, well, you would have the space and you could social distance. But as I talked with Dr. Glykoff yesterday, he made a perfect point. We'd have to assign seats. So if we assign someone a seat at the top right row, and their student was in the far left side of the stadium, are they going to be happy with that? No, they're going to want to move. And then how do we handle that? There's just too many variables with the stadium, and as Rob said, I think what happens when we wake up May 31st and it is pouring and we can't be out there? We had a football game this year that we had to leave before halftime. Our students were stuck in the, I don't know what you call that, the tunnel? Yeah, the tunnel. And I'm afraid something like that would happen. And what would we all do? I mean, so the stadium, I know people keep saying that, well, what about the stadium? What about the stadium? The stadium is not an option, in my opinion. I also think giving them the stage is giving them the same thing that the other Brooklyn graduates have. They get to have that experience. We're going to, I thought one of the options was we'll make a DVD so that even if we allow parents in to see this, or if we don't, if it's closed off, depending on what the number is, because we have to comply with that number 10. And so we would give them a DVD. We'd hopefully give them a picture of themselves with Mr. Wingler, and so they would have as normal of the experience as possible, with nothing as normal right now. I understand what you're saying, Rick. The only concern I have about the offsite is anything we sponsor, we're responsible for. So if there's more than 10 people there and there's more, then we're responsible for it. And what people were to do after they get their cap and gown, after they get their diploma, after they go home to their home or to wherever, is their business. But when they're here or when we're sponsoring something, it's our responsibility. We're on the hook. So I also have said this from the very beginning. I think that, I know people have said, well, why don't you wait till June or July or August even? We can't do that. We have students entering the military, and like Rob said, I think they deserve to have this experience along with everybody else. Thank you for your service in advance, because I think it's a commendable thing what you've done. So that's where I stand. I think we should go with the route of bringing them in 10-minute increments. I don't think we should have them lined up, because you know what? We've talked about this too. What 18-year-old who's with their friends is not going to be like, let me take some pictures together. They're not going to stand 6 feet apart from each other. They're not. They're going to want to be together. They're going to want to take pictures. They're going to want to. And so having them have a set time where they come in, they're 10 minutes, they get their cap, they get their gown, they go across the stage that Elvis played on, and that's what I think.
I mean, if you look at, we're under stay-at-home orders right now, and when they lit the stadium lights to honor them at 8:20, whatever the thing was, there was groups of people that went up there and ignored the stay-at-home order.
And
I mean, that's why I'm saying this has to be so clear-cut, because certain people are just going to do what they want to do because it's in the moment, and what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We're gonna drag a bunch of people out of here. We have to control it to that extreme because people will take advantage. Sadly, there's always that one person that ruins it for everybody.
Just, and speaking about that,
How about having nice trellis, like up on stage that could be built, class of 2020? It was something a little bit nicer for the picture. So when they frame a picture, it'll be something for them. So they'll have, like Bonnie was saying, they'll have the video. In actual fact, I wouldn't mind coming in, and Mr. Black could probably tell me differently, but have the whole board actually say congratulations to that particular graduate, put it on video and patch it into whatever they're gonna get. You know, why not?
I don't care, I speak for myself, what hoops we have to jump through to do something special for
Yeah.
these kids.
yes.
And I'm sure you guys all feel the same way.
I don't think any of us, you know, I have a daughter graduating. I don't think, you know, I look at the greater good, and I think we don't have to be there on stage when those kids come on board.
Well, it could just be one of us.
Yeah,
That
it's
would
just
that
one
would
of us
allow
with
for
us,
more
yeah.
family
One
members.
of us.
Yeah, I don't care about
Yeah.
rotating
And
or.
scheduling it out and, or do it collectively, maybe in this room, that we all say congratulations to the
Or
graduate.
just do, if you wanna include that, just do a short video where all of us are together saying
Yeah.
congratulations, and then splice that into the
Yeah.
DVD.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming to see us.
No one does. No one
Nobody's
wants.
interested.
No one
Yeah,
wants to.
so-
use it. But so I have to say, with what Rob said about the stadium lighting, I think, you know, when people were wavering about this, you know, using the stadium, I think that was a prime example of why you can't use the stadium, because some people are just never going to listen. And other parents, I know of seniors, told parents, don't go up to the stadium. They're going to cancel it. You're going to ruin it for everybody. And people were just like, I don't care. I can't see the lights from my house. I can't do this. My senior. It isn't about that. Let's not do anything to ruin it for everybody else. And that's why I think we have to be very specific on what we do, giving clear instructions so that everyone gets the opportunity to do it.
And we do have to do it quickly because honestly, this is a powder keg.
It is. That's why I
I
think
mean,
the
this
sooner
is-
we get this set, the better.
Mr. Roper, we haven't heard yet from you. You
No,
got some
I'm-
thoughts?
No, as far as what, having spaced out intervals across the auditorium is fine. I mean, it's, like it's been said, everybody has their, has their moment. I like Rick's idea of the backdrop, just to make it a little more, they're not gonna get the songs, they're not gonna get the alma mater, they're not gonna get all of that, but at least it'll be something.
Well, and again, they may not get it there in person, but those are things that obviously are components of a commencement.
Yeah.
And what
We
we'd
could
like
do
to
that.
do is try to work with our choir. I mean, choirs have met virtually
Yes.
and sang songs. How can we do that and continue to do that? Because the alma mater is, they typically have another song. How do we build pop and circumstance into some sort of opening? But I think we need to do more than just pictures, still pictures
Right.
of our kids, because certainly a still picture doesn't give justice to what these 17 and 18-year-olds have done and accomplished and what they've meant to all of us. And so that's why I'm trying to, try to create a special Brooklyn event.
If you do the video, Dr.
Yeah.
Mark, so you have a little trellis, you do the pictures, you also do the walk, the graduation walk, show that on video. But when they're within a trellis too, you have somebody like the high school principal yourself announce that they're going into the military, that they received the National Merit Scholarship, art scholarships. So you can basically give them that moment to profile everything else that they've done. I know we do it collectively normally on stage, but do it individually.
That could be read like after, there's the photo and
Yeah,
boom, it's almost like everybody's getting their own little bio. It's gonna be a long video, but it's gonna be a good video.
Well, and I think that's where we as a smaller school have an advantage. Certainly 105 graduates, we do have the advantage. Our graduation ceremonies usually run about an hour, and, which is nice. But we realizing that we don't have to keep this to an hour, if there's important elements. to it. But I think the most important one is honoring our kids.
We're,
So
we're gonna have the other components, correct? You're gonna have your speech on there. Bill's gonna have his. We're gonna
yeah,
add
we'd
those
like
other
to
components to the video,
like
to the DVD.
like we've said, we want to put together the main elements that a commencement would have, and that is, you know, our building principal addressing our graduates and our students. You know, a brief message by their superintendent. Student messages. You know, we've got to usually have a couple of students who have an address. So bringing them in so that they can be videotaped for that as well. But then each of the graduates, you know, they're and obviously song. So trying to build that together, and fortunately we've got some savvy folks, you know, like Mr. Black and others that can help us kind of put those things together into some sort of package. But I've been writing some of the ideas down.
So we have the capacity to do what we're talking about.
I
Just a
believe
mixture of live at the moment and the recording, and then just lumping it all together and having a DVD of it.
yeah. So I think so what I'm hearing is, you know, going forward with this type of, you know, bringing people in, whatever increments the building principals feel is important with that. So, you know, I was going to bring our high school principals in on this today too. I thought they were maybe call me up, but nonetheless, they're probably either listening in or so I can share that with them. What else was I going to say? I think, you know, Mr. Slattery and others said this best. Whatever we decide, we realize we're not gonna make everybody happy, and you know, the nature of my work is that. So there, you know, I make decisions that not everybody's going to be happy. But I think you've known me long enough that the students are always at the center of it, and how do we make it as appropriate as possible for them? And you said it best, Rick. I mean, you got your daughter graduating. And I'm sure there's emotions running through your house with that. And so we're feeling for her and the others to say, how do we do that best? So I've heard a lot of good ideas. I think the other thing that has come up is, you know, people have talked a lot about it like a parade. I mean, we all know that the Spirit Parade was a big deal. You know, that was a lot of fun. We enjoyed that. It was a great way to engage. I'm saying this as something else. Is that have value to people, you know, in terms of a graduation parade around Brooklyn to parade our kids. My only concern, and you and I have talked about this, Mrs. Barczyk, is just the staging of that. Because if we bring that together, I think somebody said it best. Our kids are going to want to get out of cars and see each other and do that and engage, because that's who they are. So I think I like the idea. It's just a matter of keeping everybody safe.
Well, number one, I spoke very highly of that parade. I thought it was unbelievable for the whole community. I like the idea of that as well for the seniors, but obviously it wouldn't be every street in the city like that. Number one, I mean, having the police cover that and ask them to do it 2 weeks later. Hey, it went over so well, do it again. Yeah. They could have a route like the Memorial Day Parade, because that's I'm assuming it's canceled. Doing something, and then once they're done and the kids go off and wherever they go and they can commingle and whatever, that's on their own.
I just want to be behind Rob's truck.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. I think it would be nice if there was some parade, you know, because we talked about it as an administrative team this morning. It's just a matter of how that gets started. That's the worry.
Waiting and having, before the parade starts, I know we've discussed that, your concern.
The staging of it is the big, but
yes.
Culminating somewhere in the front of the high school would be wonderful.
Who started?
I'm actually, Mr. Hare has just called in, so I'm gonna include him in here. So, Mr. Hare, how you doing tonight?
Hey, how are you? You actually have Mr. Whitmer in my show.
Great. This
So
is 2 straight board meetings, Mr. Hare. What is this? You know, this is great.
You've got Mr. Whitmer here with us too.
Oh, okay.
Good evening.
Hello.
Evening.
Who started the parade?
That was actually, I think, initiated from a high school teacher, Mr. Abramovic, I think.
Yeah.
I would start with him then.
Yeah, Mr. Abramovic came up with the idea and then had sent it over to myself and Bill, and then kind of worked on the logistics. Officer Meadows did a great job putting together the parade routes. and doing that. And then Mr. Bromwick worked to put teachers in groups, and I thought the outpouring of support from the teachers and the community was impressive. I had a lot of teachers comment after to Bill and I that it was very touching for them, and some had said that they were brought to tears just by seeing the kids and how much we miss our kids and our families.
Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit, gentlemen, about some of the plans of bringing our graduates in one at a time and doing the walk across the stage, reading their names, talking a little bit about bio information about them. I think some really good ideas and confirming a lot of the things that we've talked about. We're talking about potentially a parade of some type as well. Obviously, we would do photographs and things like that. How do we incorporate perhaps our high school staff? Because obviously they're also a big part of our kids and their successes. And obviously they parade in with us into commencement. Any ideas on how we can do that safely? Gentlemen?
Yeah, so I guess if I've been listening to the meeting, and I know we've had a lot of conversations about this today. If we're following the guideline or the idea that the students are going to come into the auditorium, which means they're going to be parked in their cars, pulling into the, I think it's the Beaumont over there by the elementary school.
Correct.
If our teachers can't be inside, which they won't be able to because they'll be 10, then perhaps we could have the teachers even, especially if we're lucky with the weather, line up outside with signs so that when the kids are leaving, they have, possibly 40, 50 teachers lined up, obviously practicing social distancing with signs. The teachers could do recorded messages. That's something else we've thought as part of the final video. We could have teachers doing recorded messages of inspiration to the kids. But there's a lot of teachers that really want to be involved in some form or fashion.
Okay. And I suspected so.
The issue with that would be if the teachers would come for that many days in a row to stand up in line, because this is not going to be, if we do this in 10-minute increments, we're not going to be able to do the whole class in one day. This is going to take several days to accomplish this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be several days.
Go ahead, Bill or Brian. I heard you started there.
No, I was just going to say, if it happens over multiple days, they could take shifts. I mean, they could even have, or they could be outside. I don't know. There's a lot of different possibilities. We just have to be really creative with how we involve them. I think from my standpoint on that, I think if we are creating kind of a digital version of this, which I think is the goal that's been discussed in the meeting tonight, and we've discussed in the admin team meeting. I think something that might be memorable too is what Bill had said previously of having teachers record messages that could be then included in that digital copy. Obviously, right now I'm speaking before I've spoken to Mr. Black and Mr. Smith about the capabilities and what that looks like as far as size, but I almost wonder if that may be even more meaningful and help us avoid some of those situations. I know that the teachers have taken on another project, which I'm not going to share right now, but Rebecca could share with you guys. But that is something for our seniors as well.
Good.
That the teachers are working on, and it's going to be pretty neat for our seniors.
I think that's a better idea, because then they have it on the video. The teacher can actually say something
Yeah.
to each, each teacher can say I think that would even be, and then it's on the DVD, so then they have it.
I like that idea too. Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah.
So, if I could real quick, one of the things that we have to do, because I think something you guys have all said tonight, which is very on the money, is we pushed our senior class meeting back. We had a senior class meeting scheduled for Wednesday. We pushed it back to next Monday, where Mr. Ross, myself, and Mr. Hare are meeting with all of the seniors. So it's my hope that whatever we're doing, the details, we can at least provide a good framework, because I would like to give those seniors a heads up on Monday, because much like Mr. Slattery said, my email inbox is full of nonstop suggestions.
Yeah. Well, I guess what my timeline would be is this, Mr. Wingler, is I wanted to have this conversation with the board tonight. And you've heard it, they've heard it. You and I and Mr. Hare speak, and I think we put together all these ideas. I share this with the board. I'm guessing they'll probably be amenable to that because I think we're trying to incorporate everybody into it. I think for the board's sake, coming up with whatever your calendar is of how we bring these students in. And I think that I heard that caps and gowns are coming in the 14th. Is that correct?
Yeah, they'll be picked up on the 15th.
So perhaps, we do it in a fashion where whatever that schedule is, I share that with the board, and then they start to sign up for times and dates that are amenable in their schedule so that they're all represented in this. So, because I want them to be able to do that. And then we, if we can have that kind of put in some solid form, I think as early as next week, that can be shared with certainly our graduating class and their families and parents so that they can start to prepare for that. So, does that sound good?
Sounds good. Yeah, good to me. Sounds excellent.
Good. When's that meeting with the counselors and the team is when again? Monday. Okay.
So
So,
we don't, and the thing about Monday is we don't have to be super specific. I think if anything, giving them and presenting the plan that's going to happen, minus some of the specific dates and specific times would be acceptable, but just to
okay.
make our senior class aware so that they can process kind of that whole piece.
Okay. And so are we thinking that when they come in and do this, and I hate to put you gentlemen on the spot with this, is that the time that they'll actually be picking up their diploma? So they come in and let's say that it's May 17th and student A comes in, walks across the stage, there's the virtual or whatever handing off of the diploma. Is that going to be the time and date when they're actually going to have their diploma?
Or would we do it closer to the 31st?
Go ahead. No, you're good, Sonny. You're good. Go ahead. No, I think that piece will depend on whether or not you want to have something else in addition, like a drive up or something. I mean, I think there's a lot to do. I think you're looking at 5 days of recording.
Yeah.
Which would be, and if you think about the process, you guys said it earlier, people getting out of their cars, the kids are going to want to hug. It's going to be a massive coordinated effort to make this work and honor the state's guidelines. So I just don't know if we're going to have the time to do a separate pickup ceremony. I don't know if that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think we need to take into consideration too is the academic calendar. As far as seniors courses, we need to make sure that aligns if we are going to try and when diplomas are passed out, we need to make sure that the courses have been run.
Okay. Well, and yeah, I think that's a little detail that we can work out, even if they're getting the cover at that particular point in time, but the diploma is then conferred officially upon completion of all the work.
Yes.
Just a little detail with that. Here's another question. It's not as important as the diploma itself, but, and we'll throw the question to our IT/cameraman.
Hi, Bobby.
Ballpark, how long do you think it, because people are gonna say, this happened on a Sunday, by Wednesday I want my video. What are you looking at time-wise?
I have no idea.
Are we looking
Like
at?
3 days would be none.
No, are we looking at 30 days?
Yeah, that would be more reasonable. Yes.
Well, I'm just, because people are gonna ask all of us.
They are. They're gonna want.
Hey, when are the videos coming out? And
Yeah.
I'd like to just have a ballpark and just say, call Bob.
Yeah, Bob. Your ears must have been ringing because you were like, Bobby's gonna do this and Bobby's gonna do that.
Well, I think that's part of our discussion, maybe even tomorrow, is maybe we should include Mr. Black and maybe Mr. Smith on our call of, how we can cobble this thing together. And then the other elements that we've talked about, music, the student speeches, your address, Mr. Wingler, and mine. So, how we can do that and get those together. So,
Definitely.
so if you do that, you guys talk afterwards and send me a time where we can meet tomorrow, and then we'll talk even deeper into this.
Sounds good. All right, thank you.
All right. Any last?
you.
Any
Have a good
last?
night.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.
Mr. Black, you got your hands full.
Yes, you do.
I'll get you a couple monster drinks.
So yeah, I appreciate you, providing that opportunity here for us to discuss this tonight. ODE's just come out with some guidance on graduation ceremonies, so I'll have to take a deeper look into that, and if it impacts anything that we've talked about tonight, I'll certainly share that after the meeting. But as you can tell, it's real time. I mean, that was, just so you know, that was sent out at 6:17. So in the midst of our meeting, ODE, Ohio Department of Education, is still processing this topic themselves because they know that it is such a big topic for school districts like ours. So I'll find out more on that and see how it impacts. But I'll try to put together what you guys have come with me, what we've discussed, share that, and have that meeting with those gentlemen tomorrow, and then hopefully get some kind of real clear-cut expectations of what we move forward with. So, and like we said, hopefully articulate something to at least our graduates and at least some ideas for next Monday, and then put some real detail and dates to it. So then we can start to get each of you in here to do that. So.
Will we need several videographers, photographers? Because it's gonna be over several days.
It's a good question.
Several, but a couple.
See, and you bring up a good point that is part of the logistic of it, Mr. Neal, because, we have photographs. I mean, part of our contract with Ripcho is that they actually photograph our graduates, and those photographs are provided to our graduates at no cost. So, do we bring them in to do that? Okay, that's number one. Number two, is Ripcho even doing that right now? They might be a non-essential business.
True.
Or
Plus-
they may have people that aren't comfortable doing that.
Right.
But if they do it, they count in that 10.
Yeah.
Well, I put the photographer down.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
there's
So then the other question is, can they come for 3 straight days or 5 straight days to do
Whatever it
that?
might be.
And so do we look at somebody ourselves who just does it for us?
Because how many other schools, I mean, that's all their business is schools.
They
So their calendar's probably booked.
exactly. So we've got a lot of different details here that have to be sorted through. Or do we just have somebody, one of our teachers or one of our staff members, that it's not going to be possible to do that. So
That's right.
we even have to contact Ripco. Who knows? Maybe they're not even doing it anymore.
If you do 10 minutes times 6, an hour, you're talking 4 hours, you only got 24 people, you still got
Yes.
another, 100 people, now
Yeah.
20, so now we're talking.
Yeah, we have what,
You're talking about a
110?
week. Yeah, you're talking about a week.
Right, we're talking about 4
Oh,
or 5.
it's
Everybody has a
You're
new
talking about 5 days.
iPhone, right?
You're
And
talking
then-
about 5 days.
You're talking about 5 days, and I know I've expressed this to you, and I know Rob has said the same thing. I'm available for any time, and I will be able to do it. We'd make our schedules available. So
Well, it's certainly a priority for us to honor our kids and time well spent, because it may be the last time that we see some of these kids in our school.
Right.
So it's a difficult time for us as well on that.
It's a messed up scenario.
So I appreciate your time on this kind of topic tonight. So thank you very much. Good thoughts.
anything else in other business?
I did not have any.
Okay. Announcement of the next Brooklyn Board of Education regular meeting is May 19th, 2020 in the Media Center located at Brooklyn Intermediate Elementary School, 9200 Bidoff Road, Brooklyn, Ohio at 6 p.m. And now we're going to enter into resolve that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education recess into 3 consecutive executive sessions to prepare for and review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation and other terms and conditions of their employment pursuant to RC 121.22 G4 2, to consider the employment of a public employee official pursuant to RC 121.22 G1, and 3, to consider the employment of a public employee official pursuant to RC 121.22 G1. Upon conclusion of this consecutive executive sessions, the board president shall gavel the board back into open session at this location. All matters discussed in these executive sessions are designated to the public officials and employees as confidential pursuant to RC 102.03B. Because of the status of these proceedings and/or the circumstances under which information will be received, the preserving its confidentiality is necessary and proper conduct of government business. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion.
Second.
Okay. We have to call the- Mr. Hoskin, can you call the roll, please? I have to, wait a minute. Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Oper?
Yes.
Mr. Slattery?
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck?
Yes,
Time is it?
We got one.
we have 7:20.
No, you didn't hear him. Will the board be doing any other business after this?
It does not say on here.
Okay,
It does not say,
make everybody aware.
yeah. Yes, it doesn't say on their agenda, it wasn't in the resolution. Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
He nodded his head yes.
After the board is done with their executive sessions, there will be no business performed by the board, and we will just be adjourned. No action taken by the board. I didn't say it as eloquent.